Welcome back to the Steam Zone. Noah, we've got a lot of good topics, a lot of good segments today. But I think where we start is episode 5 Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. We've been talking a lot about on this podcast and in the defense tech and reindustrialized movement. Hey, nice shirt. Movement about how the current, there's this new moment, everyone new builders, but don't forget about the primes. Don't forget about the traditional players. Noah, there's an article about Oracle. I hope everyone checks. I bought the stock early, but Oracle is up huge because of the announcement of a huge new deal with OpenAI. Break it down for us. Is this a real deal? What's going on here?
Buy the stock early. Oracle's been around since I think the 1970s, so you'd had a good amount of time to get involved in Oracle. Yeah, here's the deal, Ben. Larry Ellison comes roaring back. The
The
stock
young gun,
closes up 40%. A young,
founder mode.
spry
Larry
81-year-old spry young CEO, not from the Gundo. I'll have $100 billion increase in his wealth in a day as the stock rockets. Here's the deal. $300 billion deal with OpenAI for compute. The reality is, Ben, they've quietly been stockpiling NVIDIA GPUs over the last few years. Those graphics processing units, those coveted chips, those have been the constraint in the market. We've covered them on the Steam Zone before. There was some concern around shipping them to China. We've heard that it's demand constrained, or excuse me, it's supply constrained, not demand constrained. There's more demand from the AI labs than the NVIDIA and AMD and these others know what to do with. And yet Oracle's been buying these up. So it turns out they have deals with everybody. Amazon, or Amazon's AI team, OpenAI, Anthropic, all these guys are signing deals with Oracle for access to these chips. And for years, Ben, for years, I'd been hearing people made fun of the Oracle Cloud. Software engineers, you have a software company, Ben. You should ask your engineers if they're developing on Oracle Cloud or if they use AWS or Azure, right? Like it was AWS or Azure is all you ever heard about. And then the government, yeah, Google as well. Oracle now roaring back. The lesson here, I think there is a lesson here about big companies. The 50-year, 60-year almost overnight success story that is Oracle. What do you make of all this, Ben?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a few weeks ago in the VC segment, right, Matt, where we had to think about what do we need to assume about all these new valuations. One of the things we needed to assume was that the traditional players didn't strike back. That you could just grab the whole market. And we just know that's not true. That there is going to be a fight. That these people got big for a reason, and maybe they got a little stagnant, but they are not going to go silently into the night. And maybe that's good too. Like it's positive for the world if Oracle makes new products too. It doesn't all have to come from startups, though I'm a big believer in startups. You can
I think there's arguments on both sides of that question, or do we want the big to get big? But this is one of those key. It's a key law. It's actually part of the power law, right? You're talking about VCs on the other side, but VCs understand this acutely, which is that your winners compound. The all-in guys that you got to let your winners ride, right? It's why these VCs, they have follow-on funds, they have growth funds. The idea is when you find something that works, the odds are that winning teams are going to keep winning. And Oracle is a behemoth. Now, they could have gone the way of 2000s, mid-2000s GE, and they could have overly bureaucratized themselves, and they could have fallen off the wayside. Now, there were a lot of people who thought they were dead man walking, but here what they were actually doing was a careful strategy, plotting their time, and now you're seeing it ripping. I think there's an interesting analogy here to the defense, to the national security, the primes. And people now, we see people are saying, okay, the primes have value, but we don't really know. We haven't fully understood how the primes, the Lockheeds, the Northrops, the Boeings of the world, the big guys, are navigating the current kind of defense tech craze. They've not been super trigger happy. They're not snapping up these companies, but we're not really sure. We don't really have a good picture into the R&D and the internal development that's going on inside these companies. So it wouldn't shock. I think a lot of people certainly wouldn't shock me it's not. Lockheed Martin is probably not going to disappear off the face of the planet. And might the big winner of all of this new money that's pouring into defense be some of the incumbents? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And even if we take it to the larger, everyone's making fun of Apple, right? The tepid release this week, new iPhone, and maybe they'll be laughing once. They'll just slop up whatever model goes cheap, and all of a sudden their AI failures will be an AI success. Who knows? But I think it does say let's not be captured by the moment, right? Whatever's hot on Twitter, whatever's hot for a week, like these things have 50-year legacies. So let's just be watching out for the long-term story and not just miss the forest for the trees.
Big, successful companies have a lot farther to fall. They have more room to run. They have a longer ramp to figure it out. Startups don't have that don't have that benefit. You don't get your small seed round startup doesn't get 6 years to figure out their strategy and bide their time. They got to move fast. But the big we're not playing
Yeah.
the same game. I think it's
It's like
important.
Succession, right? Everyone loves the TV show Succession, but until he literally keeled over, their old man was still in the game making moves, right? Everyone kept doubting him, thinking he was losing his edge, and he kept coming back. So I think in order to
I've
kill
never
some of
seen the
these big
show.
companies, oh, you're going to have to kill them.
I will take your word for it.
Next week, we'll do our season one recap of Succession. No, and I know the fans have been clamoring.
All right. Let's close that one.
You haven't seen Succession? What the fuck?
All right, Ben. So you're wearing a reindustrialized shirt today. As we know, reindustrialization, manufacturing is booming in the United States, right?
I don't know. Is that
Well,
true?
a new jobs report says maybe not, Ben. This is, look, I know there's been a lot of drama around the Bureau of Labor Statistics the last few weeks. The political leaders have had some thoughts. Here's the report out today. It turns out, Ben, that employers shed 12,000 manufacturing jobs in August. Payrolls in manufacturing have shrunk by 42,000 since April. This is what a new study says. These are not my numbers. I don't have access to the raw data. Please don't kill the messenger. I'm relaying what we've been told here. The reality is for 2025, this report says manufacturing employment in the United States has shrunk by 33,000 jobs. In the past 6 decades, Ben, according to the Federal Reserve of St. Louis, since 1960, manufacturing was 34% of total employment in 1960. 1970, we peaked. We saw 19.5 million people employed in manufacturing. This year in August, we're at 12.7 million. The industry's lost 87,000 jobs even just since 2024. A lot of numbers, but maybe more than the absolute value is the direction it's going. Ben, what does that all mean for the reindustrialization movement?
Yeah, I think it's like we say all the time, right? The details matter, right? There is a lot. I've got some buzzwords on my shirt, right? But what are the details? Are the jobs coming? When are they coming? I don't know. I think take the long view. We've talked about taking the long view too, right? With Oracle. When does Oracle strike back? I don't know. When does the big strike back? So we can't just judge one report and say this is everything. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's trending in the right direction. So it has me worried. But I think we need to be clear about what is success. What does that mean in the short run? What does that mean in the medium term? What does that mean in the long run? And make clear benchmarks and gates that you have to pass through to say this is a success. I don't know. Maybe success is this number here and then later it changes, but we'll have to see.
Three legs of the stool, right? Volume, price, and quality.
Like
Which
he's
is,
got
can
an
we make
MBA.
more stuff? Can we make more stuff? Can we do it cheaper, or can we do it better? And then then you layer on the policy objectives of can we also use this as can we employ more people to do it? Now that's not everybody's policy objective, right? Some people say make it faster, make it cheaper, make it better at all costs. Do it with machines if you have to. Others may say no, the reason to do this is to employ more Americans. So we got to be clear about what the policy objectives are. So before I agree with you, before you hammer the reindustrialization movement or before you hammer policies that are leading to this outcome, you need to understand the why behind those policies. And it starts with policymakers articulating their theory of the case. But the other side of this, and Ben, I think you appreciate as you talk about the details mattering. Well, if we in 2025 are ramping up manufacturing and production here in the United States, that is not going to lead to tens and hundreds of thousands of jobs immediately. These factories take time to build. They take time to recruit, to train, to hire, and to onboard these folks. And we all know these labor statistics have a nasty lag. And then even with the lag, we tend to go back and revise them. That seems to be the thread the last couple of years. I'm not really sure why it's been as big a gulf as we've seen, but the estimates have been significantly off. So I think my take on all of this is this good or is it bad? It depends on the objective of the policy. I think the policy has more objectives than solely employing more people. And it's way too early to, like, this should not be used to throw water on the reindustrialization movement, which has many knock on effects other than employing Americans.
I think we've solved the industrialization movement now. Stay here. We're actually doing our next theme zone from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We will get on the ground data.
Now entering the steam zone, we've got Nick Frazier, active duty Army. He's managed a large tech portfolio for Army Special Operations. He's joining us, of course, in his personal capacity. These opinions do not reflect the opinions of the Department of War, but we're excited to have him nonetheless. Nick, thanks so much for making some time for the steam zone. Tell us what's going on with technical experimentation this week. It's been a big week down for you guys.
Yeah, Noah and Ben, really appreciate you letting me come on and talk about this event. SOCOM Technical Experimentation event. We just did one. I just left Fort Bragg earlier this morning, and it's an event where we bring together SOCOM problems, we bring together vendors, and the magic sauce is we put operators in front of the vendors and the program managers to kick the tires on technology. So in plain language, we want startups and companies with really innovative emerging technology to come bring their prototypes and their early versions. And we understand where it's at technology-wise, and we want to ask questions and provide feedback and see who's who in the zoo. And so it's just a really great opportunity for special operations of SOCOM to bring everything together and try to break down some of the obstacles.
Exciting stuff. Experimentation is a great word. What does it actually mean?
Yeah. So experimentation for us is that we have theories or theses that we want to see if a technology can do something. And then we want to get out and try to minimize the risk and figure out if it can work or not. So in this example is, can a thing do what it says it does? So the event this year, I think we had hundreds of entities applied. And I think the government down selected 70 to come attend. And they said they could do a certain thing. That's what the government selected them on. Again, I'm in my personal capacity. And when we laid out our expectations that we expect to be able to see it with our eyes or to manipulate it, a drone, a new software, whatever, some companies realized that they quite weren't ready for prime time, even though we had really reduced expectations for the emerging technology. And so for us, we want to see if it can do what it says it does, not necessarily in a lab environment and not necessarily in a full combat environment, but in a field environment. Can it work in the dirt? Can it work in the sunshine? Can it work in the humidity? Can somebody hold it, touch it? And so that's what we mean for experimentation.
Yeah, I love it.
And when I think about experimentation, back to my science days, you have what you talk about, the hypothesis. But one thing we didn't care about in experimentation, and my experience as a Marine, we did care about, unfortunately, is giving the space for failure. Like when you experiment, some things aren't going to work out, and that's okay. My experience with the DoD, not speaking for the DoD or the Department of War personally in in any capacity either, is we are really bad at accepting failure in an environment, like letting failure happen in certain environments. How do you have a good experiment that allows for failure, but failure that we're learning from?
Yeah, it's a good point. It comes up a lot. So obviously nobody likes to fail, and we like to get all of our failure out before the mission, right? And training and preparation. The way we look at failure is we don't frame it as failing, we're failing as learning really quickly. And so we want to have as tight and as useful of a feedback loop as possible. And so in that case, for a young startup or a vendor, I want to make sure that we'll really start dumping in sweat and money into a solution, that there's actually a problem that we care about that they're solving as well. That if they think that the approach that they're taking is the exact one that a Green Beret Sergeant First Class is going to need on an ODA. And so we want to make sure that it's okay if they throw something up in the air and it doesn't go as far as it does, but they get really good user feedback out of it. That's a success for us. So we don't couch it as failure, we couch it as a really fast learning feedback loop.
Super important, especially in the earlier days of a company. Lay it out for us, Nick. Let's make some news here. What were some of the con-ops or some of the concepts of operations, some of the concepts of employment that y'all were testing this time? I know the theme was human-machine teaming. That's really broad. What were some of the things y'all tried out?
Yeah, a core special operation forces truth is that humans are more important than hardware. And so the theme of this technical experiment was human-machine integration. And what that means in plain language is, how do we enable a human to do the things that only a human can do, and then allow machines to do the things that they're really good at? So making better, faster decisions. And that could be in an operations center. So in a classic example would be, for those that are familiar with an operations center, you have a lot of TVs and people are watching TVs. And if you have a drone overhead, historically you had one person watching one drone and they just stared at the camera for hours on end. We've got technology now with AI and stringing together some of the AI with traditional software that basically allows the traditional petster to watch a lot more than just one feed. We can watch dozens, if not more, feeds as well. Some of the other things we're looking at, the drone dominance memo from the Department of War, from our Secretary of War, and the President's executive order said, hey, the United States is going to lead in drones. Huge thing, but we're not interested. We weren't particular, the government wasn't particularly interested in just standard run-of-the-mill drones. We want to know about some of the enabling technologies that will provide a decisive edge. So we're interested on like, how can things go further? How can things have a lower signature? So a very unclassified example would be a loud lawnmower hovering overhead gives away the position. So how do I reduce the acoustic pattern of a drone so that I can do a whole lot more with it so it's not necessarily detected? Some of the other things we're really interested in is how do we protect ourselves from the same drone threats? When you talk about counter UAS, which is a huge problem around the world and a huge area of focus for the US government, how do you detect, how do you disrupt, how do you defeat these things? And what we have found is that's going to take a lot of innovation from a lot of different sectors. And we're going to have to try to integrate these things to come together as well. I doubt that we'll see a one-size-fits-all solution. So those are the types of things we're really interested in. And we're looking, in plain language, we're looking for the companies that have a novel approach and they're pushing the envelope on what we thought was possible, pulling stuff out of the lab, out of the research institute, out of the garage, and having something that we can start seeing and kicking.
Yeah, Nick, when that goes well, so let's take this to its logical conclusion, right? These companies want to know, and folks watching who have been a part of this, one of the big questions folks ask before you go to an event, okay, great. Let's say we go, we hit a home run, we knock it out of the park, we crush exactly what you all wanted to see. What happens next? How quickly can you get us on contract? How big is the contract? Who are we going to be working with? So on and so forth. Talk us through what is the tail of this technical experimentation event? What happens for some of the successes that you see come out of this? What are the tools that SOCOM uses to quickly move from, hey, this was a cool experiment, to now let's get this into the fight?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different options that can happen out of this thing as well. I just want to highlight it's not just SOCOM that's there. We work with a lot of our government partners. So as far as technology reconnaissance, we're on the gov to gov side, we're comparing notes, we're sharing information, we're trying to figure out if there's a way to collaborate in plain language, like how do we share resourcing? If you do this, I do that. How can I put some of my money in your contract? How can you put some money on my contract? The other things we look at is some companies aren't quite ready. Some companies are moving really fast on elsewhere in the DoD, and instead of the government maybe doing a new start on a parallel effort, we figure out how do we add gasoline to an existing effort. That's really important. I'll tell you that every vendor that came out of this technical experimentation got operator evaluation that went into what's called the Vulcan system as well. And that's important because as we're doing our throughout the year evaluations of if hypothetically, if there were contracts, that feedback matters and it's considered formal feedback from the operator. And it allows us to do a lot of things as well. Other mechanisms, of course, some of these companies may want to explore options with whether it's SOCOM or some other service component. It can be a no-cost loan. It can be a cooperative research and development agreement. There's lower SBIR, so Small Business Innovation Rewards. And Sina, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. And then what's really interesting is that sometimes some of these vendors or some of these really innovative companies don't realize that there's people that are really complementary to them, and they make some relationships and they start forming some partnerships that make it really interesting on the government side on how to provide capability solutions as well. And just to maybe to put a wrap it all up, what we're looking for on our end is we're trying to find, for the product market fit, we're trying to find warfighter capability fit. And that's where we're trying to how to de-risk this. And we may want part of the solution, or we might want that what a vendor offers and we want to pair it with something else. But that's typically what the government's looking at when we're going to these things as well.
Yeah, Nick, it's a pretty cool opportunity. I think that you've laid out the value clearly, both for industry and for the operator, for the warfighter, why they would want to engage with industry in this. Great way to see what's coming down the pipe. So that said, if folks are listening, they've gotten fired up and they're like, awesome, I want to submit my white paper, I want in. What's next in the TE gauntlet for you all?
Yeah, so I'll say that the SOCOM science and technology folks don't ever stop working. So as soon as they come out of this event, they start the grind for the next one. And the next major event is going to be, I believe, on the Panhandle, Florida, location TBD, but think Eglin Air Force Base, somewhere in there. And the official announcement on SAMS.gov should be coming out in the next week or two for SOCOM technical experimentation. I believe it will be 26-1 because it'll be a new fiscal year. And that'll take place in January. Same thing, you're going to, for those that apply and are down selected, you can expect to have government feedback, formal evaluations, conversations with operators on the ground, and then just know on the back end the government is talking gov to gov as we're going through and evaluating on these things as well. So think of it instead of the typical conference where you're manning just a table and you're wondering what's happening. I just want to hear exactly we're coming, and we've already down selected and we're looking for them as well. So please keep an eye on that one. We want as many innovative American companies as possible applying for it. We'd love to see it.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's and maybe who knows? Maybe we'll have Steam Zone will be live at one of these things, Nick. We might have to put in a good word on the back end. We'll follow up on that, but I think a live
Steam Zone and bathing suits in the water eventually.
That'd be great.
I don't know that people want to see us in our bathing suits, but the Florida in the winter doesn't sound too bad at all. Awesome. Hey, Nick, thanks for making time. Thanks for leading the charge on this. It's important work. It's timely. It's got to happen now, and it's got to happen fast, and it's got to happen at a scale that you all are making happen. So thank you. Appreciate your time, and we will see you again soon here in the Steam Zone.
I appreciate it. I just want to thank all the great companies that came out and participated, and all the SOCOM and U.S. Army personnel that supported. It was really great to have everybody's participation, and I appreciate it.
Welcome back to the next segment. We've got an amazing guy, Andrew, here. He's going to tell us more about U.S. industrial dominance and how he's working to do that. And we like that at the Steam Zone. So tell us what you're working on, Andrew.
All right. So Noramark is a product that we built. When I say we, it's brother and I have been working on this. It started with an idea, right? Like it actually started with this idea. My brother has been in manufacturing, fabrication for a long time. And I was working at Amazon, and he wanted to have a product made, right? And he's like, hey, you're at Amazon. How do I get this thing made in the US? And I was like, oh, it is super easy. Like our sellers make shit all the time and sell it, right? So I started to dig into it, and I realized, oh wait, in the US, no one seems to know how to do that. It's super easy. You want in China, India, Alibaba, go to these other sites. It's very straightforward. Doing it in the US ended up being just Google search, and it was actually very difficult to do. And initially we thought, oh, maybe nobody makes stuff in the US. And we started to dig into this more, and we learned that it's absolutely
You're not alone.
not
You're
true.
not alone in that theory, Andrew. Others have had similar thoughts.
So the thing that's surprising to most people is the US is a pretty close number 2 behind China in terms of manufacturing output. And actually not that far behind. The US manufactures a tremendous amount of stuff. It's just that it's hard to know who's doing what. And it's a combination of factors, right? One is just decades of stagnation. For the people who are still making stuff in the US, outside of specific like defense, but they've been told for decades that they're stupid, right? They should just offshore it. They should just send it overseas. It'll be cheaper. It'll be all this stuff. And so a lot of them have really learned not to trust the folks around them. There's just become a very low trust environment with a lot of IP theft, with private equity buying companies and just gutting them and sending everything offshore. It's become a pretty low trust environment. There's a number of factors impacting, I think, the modernization of manufacturing in the US. When I talk about modernization, I mean something like Alibaba, right? Where we've come to expect the ability to go online, find something, and get it pretty quickly. And I think that expectation is carried over into manufacturing as well. It's not just consumer goods. But you've seen a lot of folks, if you look at X at all, right? Like Zane talking about the buy now button for metal from the US, right? And things like that. And that sort of thing is just, it's hard. You don't find a whole lot of that in US manufacturing. You do see that overseas. So that infrastructure is kind of missing. And I think that as there was this big craze towards offshoring and pushing everything overseas, that modernization, that modern infrastructure hasn't built out in US manufacturing. So we started with this idea like, hey, we want to build that. Let's build Alibaba for North America. And one of the first obstacles we ran into was that a lot of US manufacturers just don't want to put their prices online. They don't want to put their designs online. They don't want to put their capabilities online because it's all going to be stolen by Chinese manufacturers. Everything. You put your price on there, it's $399 for this particular thing. They're going to put their price on there as $380 or $289 or whatever, even if they're taking a loss. And they can do that because of the weaponization of trade from our unfriendly partners like China.
Wait, so that's a big idea, Andrew. I want to hop in here for a second. The big idea, and this is the claim, is that American manufacturers don't put things online because it's just giving away information that otherwise there's a bit more embarrassed to pick up a phone call. So they're willing to basically trade additional friction in a selling process, a sales process, because they don't want to give away the competitive intelligence to places like China. That's a big deal.
We've seen that firsthand, and folks who make consumer-facing products in the U.S. run into this all the time. Right? Like they put their product on Amazon, and 50 copies of it will show up on Amazon, sometimes using their pictures, using the same naming, and so on. And it's very problematic. People spend tens of thousands of dollars trying to have these imitators removed. And if you're a manufacturing company and you've got tons of components that you make, trying to chase all that down and stop it is really difficult and often not worth the headache. I mean, that's part of it, right? So there's this trust component. Who am I doing business with? I need to know who you are. So initially, we actually built a prototype of this like marketplace. Like, okay, you put all your parts on there and you can sell them to people, to other businesses, right? B2B marketplace. The folks we spoke with are like, yeah, we love this idea. We're not going to do it because it opens us up to too much risk. But we hope everybody does it, but we're not going to do it. And we heard that from so many people that we said, okay, let's take a big step back. What we don't need is a marketplace. What we do need is some kind of trust score that U.S. manufacturers, specifically U.S. manufacturers, can use to do business with each other and scale beyond the business card and the person they met in person at a trade show. So that's what we built into Noramark. The core aspect of Noramark is this thing called the Noramark score. And it's based on the business you've done with other U.S. companies. So the concept that we anchor the Noramark score in is trust, and the trust comes from other U.S. businesses. So it's not like a Amazon review. It's not a price contest. It's actually based on verified American businesses that have done business with each other. If you had some shop make a part for you and you find out that they just outsource it to China through Xometry, that's going to be reflected in their score.
Andrew, you just explained a scoring system. You got all the way through it and you didn't use the word AI. I'm impressed.
Yeah, how do you is there, and I'd love it if this is true, is there no AI buzzword here? Which is
There's
great.
no AI buzzword.
That's awesome.
No.
It's the opposite of Intel Inside. No AI.
This is great to hear.
We do use machine learning. We use deterministic machine learning in our system. I hate the term AI for what it's worth. I have a hot take on just about everything. But
this is good. We love a hot take on AI. Let's do a tangent here.
I refuse to call it AI for starters. It's an LLM. It's a large language model. There is no intelligence. It's pattern matching of existing data, right? So if you try to use a model like this to make guesses at the future, it's going to be wrong almost every time. Whereas like more classic deterministic machine learning, like you can actually make projections with that and you can know why they might be accurate. So yeah, I could go on and on about that. But
Ben, I think Andrew just turned off genius intelligence. We're not doing genius intelligence. Just shout out to President Trump. Yeah. No genius intelligence.
And again, I'm not a troglodyte. I love tech. Like I'm all for this for new development. And
that award, we got an award for the biggest word ever used on the Steam Zone. What was it? Troglodyte. I've got to be honest, I've not heard that one before. That's good. You're teaching us something new, not just about industrialization. This is exciting.
Nice. That's awesome. So yeah, so we built out this trust score infrastructure and actually got a lot of traction with this. We had a lot of companies come and say, this is cool. We like it. And our idea for monetization is if you need a higher level of verification. And so we will help to verify people up past a certain point, right? We'll do some of the verification, but you can organically grow your trust score in the system without paying as well. All right. So it's free to start and you do get access to more features in the system with the paid tiers, more business intelligence, but it's not a requirement. The next step after that though was, people were like, well, I want some way to transact on this trust score. At the end of the day, I'm running a business here. I want to make money with my business. And so what we're releasing now is a no-fee marketplace. And the reason for that is twofold. Everything we do, we try to root it in these principles of U.S. industrial dominance. And when I look at what Xometry is doing, I couldn't design a better way to cripple American industry than Xometry. And I know a lot of US shops make money off of Xometry. It's a great way to get parts made quickly. But when you think about it, what they're doing, they own that relationship between the buyer and the seller, right? The maker and the buyer. They own that relationship. You have to transact through Xometry. They charge a pretty significant fee for it. And they're giving you these options to go and offshore this part, maybe for less money in China or India or wherever. What we're doing with our no-fee marketplace is literally flipping that on its head. So the trust score is what you're transacting on. We won't charge any fee. You own the relationship. We monitor the relationship through the trust score to get other data points from other people. So maybe you get to know this company really well and you're transacting with them and you think things are going great. Maybe someone finds out something about them that you didn't know. Now you have that intelligence as well. So you own that relationship, but we help you to keep monitoring that relationship over time. So rather than getting in the middle of these transactions, we actually get out of the transaction and let US shops transact with each other, but we help to monitor that trust score over time so that you know that the company you're dealing with, whether they change owners or whatever happens over time, right? So you know what's going on with that company over time.
Right.
Matchmaking platform of sorts, but you're not trying to own the relationship. You're not trying to. It's the difference between a task rabbit model where they don't want to take anything off the platform, and more of a facilitator where you just want people to connect and they use you as the backbone of trust.
Yeah, think of it this way. Rather than using Uber to ride hail, right? Imagine if you could see drivers in your area and you could see their driving records. And you said, that's the guy I want to drive with today. You could drive with him anytime. Maybe it turns out the guy ends up with a drinking problem, gets a DUI, right? You don't know this, but the driving record's going to reflect that. So you can decide next time around, do I want to keep going with this guy that I know, whether his driving record got worse or not, or maybe I don't want to work with him next time. But like with Uber or Xometry, right? They're obfuscating what's going on in the industry completely. You don't really know who you get matched with, right? You don't know what they're doing with your information. With our system, you just work directly with people that you know, but you have access to their sort of records and how they're transacting with others. It's like FICO or like being able to see a driving record. So
what's the response been so far, Andrew? Do people have to sign up or do they have to opt in, or you can just create those scores ex ante?
No, people do have to sign up and opt in. We have the world's largest directory of US manufacturers. So that is information that we've pulled together. We've scraped that information. We validated that information. We've made that public. But then as far as the trust scoring system, people do have to opt into that. So if someone is just in our directory and they're not opted in, trust score is 0, we don't know about them. Someone either comes in and claims that directory listing, says, hey, that's my business. They come and add their business, then they can start building up their trust score.
Yeah, big undertaking. So where are you guys at in this process? What's the momentum? What's the stage of maturity?
It's early days for us. We're coming up on 9 months that we've been doing this and 6 months since we launched the very first version of the web application you could log into. And so far, the response has been really good. We've had traction with several hundred US manufacturers that have actually come in, signed up and started tracking their own trust scores. We have a deal with Siemens USA. We're going to be doing a press release on that soon. Siemens wants to use this to help to expand their reshoring efforts in the US. And it's a great way for them to bring in their network and then expand that network as well as they go.
Wow. So if people are interested, if they want to learn more, if they're looking to source potentially manufacturers, where should they go? How do they get involved?
Go to noramark.com. That's the thing to do. You can use the directory. What I encourage folks to do is log in, set up their business. You don't have to be the owner of the business. You could be an engineer who works on something. As we roll out the marketplace, you can search, you can add your demand into the system. You can search and see who has those capabilities and who can meet that demand. But yeah, just go to the website and start.
Love it. So before we let you go, Andrew, it's tradition here on the Steam Zone. We give you 30 seconds here to tell us what's on your mind. Blow off some steam. 30 seconds. You've got the floor. Anything you want.
Oh man, so my big picture vision for this and what I really would like to see is for folks on the manufacturing floor, machinists and welders, making the same amount of money as programmers in San Francisco. And we think we can help drive that by fixing the valuation of American manufacturing businesses. Rather than everything just being kind of locked up in the owner's head, right, and the contacts that they have, we can actually capture the long-term value of these businesses, which helps to bring more finance more investment into U.S. manufacturing, which raises wages, right, for manufacturers, drives demand. I would love to see a future where high school kids are like, I want to go be a machinist. I want to work on robots. I want to build stuff. I think that would be a huge win for our country.
I love it. It's a laudable mission. It's an important goal. And I think you're going to make it happen. Andrew Cornuda, the company is Noramark, noramark.com. Check it out. He's a great follow on X if you're on the socials. Andrew, thanks for stopping by the Steam Zone.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, welcome to the end of the show where we like to steam something up or down. We're recording this on 9/11, and I'm thinking a lot about that day. I was a 10-year-old child. I vividly remember people with ashes walking up the Manhattan streets on my way home. I stared at the smoke from the pile that was the World Trade Center from the rooftop on my apartment growing up. There was this moment on 9/12 which we felt unified as a country. I think it was still there in 2010 when I was 19 years old at Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, and it was back when I was 21, back for my second summer of Marine Corps Officer Candidate School. Some of the hardest, maybe the hardest training I've done. Every American in my group was there in some direct or really indirect way because of 9/11, right? There was nobody that was 19 or 20 or even some of the older guys that were 25. Everyone was there at that moment, I think, in some way, directly or indirectly because of 9/11. This is the most diverse group of people I've ever been with in my life, politically, racially, economically, all demographics. Right? We had conservative, liberals, far right, far left, rural, urban, every Christian sect, Jewish, atheist, Muslim, Sikhs. We had it all, and everyone was unified, I think, by this idea of serving their country. This was 2012. There was no defense tech. No one was getting into the military to pivot into something else. This wasn't even a drop in someone's imagination, right? Everyone was there not to make money, but because they cared about the country. Last week, I went back to Quantico. I went back to Officer Candidate School. I went back to the basic school. I ran the old trails. And I was like laughing that I used to suffer in these trails. Not that they're not still hard, but when you don't have the stress of passing those exams, it's kind of fun to put yourself momentarily back in those shoes. And I was gleeful. I look back fondly on the training then and being unified with a bunch of people trying to do something good. And hard things are definitely worth doing. It's going to be hard to get back to 9/12, and I don't know how we do that. But, God, we need everyone in this country working on the same page. And so I think we can do it. We've had hard times in this country in the past, and we've recovered. So that's it. I hope we do it. Let's get back to 9/12.
Thanks for the message, Ben. Yeah, so I'm going to talk also about something that's, I think, maybe related to 9/11. It's hard not to. Actually just got a text from a friend that said, I really haven't felt this way since 9/11. And I think the point was that there's just a moment in this country. You can pick what uncertainty, what concern you want to elevate, but we're in a moment in this country where we just don't know what's coming next. And there's a level of unease and a level of fear and a level of concern that is really not normal. It's not native to a generation that grew up in the post-Cold War, we're the children of the boomers and of the greatest generation who have not known fear. And we had the global war on terror. There was certainly moments of it, but America had the upper hand. It was always about fighting wars abroad so we didn't have to fight them at home. And whether you're looking at Russia incursions into NATO territory, whether you're looking at China expanding beyond kind of what people thought possible maybe 10 years ago. When you look at now the American military operating in our own backyard in the Western Hemisphere, opening a new front against narco traffickers or maybe expanding the war on drugs, we're not really sure. Every day it feels there is another spate of senseless violence. In the last week, we've watched a 31-year-old father of two young girls be shot on a debate stage in a gruesome attack. We've watched a young woman, political refugee, stabbed to death on public transportation. We've seen school shootings. As we're taping this, there's news of potentially a shooting at the Naval Academy, which is obviously near and dear to our hearts here. There is so much emotion right now that I think the opportunity for us as a country and for us as human beings is to separate between the things we feel and the things that we do. And it's actually not an invitation, it's an imperative. If we can't, as a country, separate the fear that we feel, the loss of control that we feel from taking actions that our sober selves would rarely think prudent, we're going to just see more and more of this. And so you're going to hear calls from political calls to ramp down the pressure one day and then go back to blaming people the next. That's what politicians do. What we as citizens can do is the same sort of emotional regulation that helps you train for a marathon, that helps you train for a sport, that helps you run a business, that helps you achieve your own goals, which is maybe it's a little box breathing, Ben, maybe it's a little 414. It's learning to be masters, not of the things that happen to us. We can't control that, but we can control how we react to those things. Clearly, there's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people who are concerned with the future of our country, and we all should be. But ultimately, the America that I love, the America that I know, is a country that has always met whatever trials, whatever tragedy has befallen it. And here on 9/11, as we record this episode, it should be, as Ben has said, a reminder of what we are capable of when we put aside the things that seem big on a day-to-day basis and remember that our small concerns, our feelings, our emotions about the state of the world are pale in comparison to the gift that we have of living in a place where we have a chance to do something about it. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.